Hi, it's Dan Lenard, the home voiceover studio master and president of World Voices, world-voices.org. We're going to talk about home studios, about WOVO, about the voiceover industry with Paul Castro Jr. on Points of Experience podcast. You got to listen.
Not only is he the best at home studios, the master, as he very correctly put it, of home studios, he has one of the most masterful mustaches in not only the business, but the world. Dan Lenard, you'll find out a lot of kind of how we got hooked up together and how integral and important my consults with him were to me starting my business out here in Los Angeles. For those of you who don't know this at this point, I started out in New York City, and I think even I had sent something to Dan when I was in New York working out of my closet in Harlem, very busy, and he basically said, "This sounds great. Whatever you're doing is wonderful." And having that kind of cosign from somebody who is doing this for the best of the best gave me such assurance to say, all right, stop worrying about all the gadgets and gizmos. Worry about the acting now. So many people have to worry about the technological aspect of things because they're starting out from scratch, or they have a lot of elements they're dealing with, or, the microphone's in the wrong place, blah, 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 blah. Once you've passed that kind of point and you've gotten the sign off to say, all right, you're good to go, now you can just focus on the acting, and that's what Dan gave me the freedom of. He also helped me out here. He's been a great influence in my career and life, and he's got a ton of amazing things going on. So stick around. We've got Dan Lenard, the home voiceover studio master, coming up for you on the Points of Experience podcast. Dan, hello.
Paul, it has been a while. Great to hear from you.
Likewise, it is great to hear and see you. I'm actually super surprised right now because I'm specifically wearing a Hawaiian shirt for you,
and
because
I'm not,
you are.
I was wearing one this morning, but
it seems so bizarre that I am wearing one and you're not. I wore this just for you though. So since I knew you were coming on. I thought
it was just a podcast, so I was actually going to come in with a wife beater on, but
listen, so long as we're clothed here.
Yeah, that wouldn't be pretty.
No. My gosh. So how have you been? Little quick story here. When I moved out here to LA in 2020, one of the first people I reached out to was you. You came to my room here that I am still in, and you helped me kind of assess my home studio, and you were gracious enough to invite me onto VOBS. Voiceover Body Shop, which is one of the best podcasts that I could recommend for anybody interested in voiceover, and we're going to get into a lot of that stuff. And we met there, and we've stayed in contact since. But it's been probably, I guess, 2 years at this point since I've moved here.
Where does the time go, really?
I don't know. I wish I could know so I could stop it from going there, because it just go. I was laying on my couch earlier, and it said it was 4:04. I shut my eyes and I opened them, and it said 4:14. I was like, there's no way. So maybe time is actually going faster.
It actually is going faster.
It is?
Go figure. Oh, yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
The Earth is speeding up, according to somebody who I was talking to the other day.
Oh.
But guess what? As you get older, it just goes by faster and faster.
Okay. Well, I'm going to have to hold on dearly, because I'm trying to not let it go too fast, because I love
Enjoy
sleep.
it while you're here,
Yeah. As we all should. So, Dan, life, what's going on? What's been new? We have so much cool stuff to talk about. I know you've got some cool stuff cooking up. I want to get into a little bit about you, but life-wise, health, how's everything going? Been busy? Been good? What's been new? Any new hobbies? What's been going on in your life since we spoke last?
Oh my goodness. Well, aside from the pandemic and, been doing a fair amount of traveling, been to Iceland, been to France, going to Morocco this fall. My wife and I decided, let's travel.
Heck yeah.
So we are. But I've taken on some responsibility and backed off on others. We've been doing voiceover body shop for 11 years now. I can't even believe that. We were doing it before people even knew how to do it. George Whittam and I had to figure it out, and we did. And that's been going very, very well. We just had a great show the other night with our good friend Mark Cashman, who was gracious enough to give us 10 tips on voiceover performance. And I keep getting voice work. I don't have to work really hard to get it. They just keep sending me stuff. I'm like, okay, sure, fine, whatever. I've been working with Pandora, which is now owned by Sirius XM Radio, and they send me stuff every now and again, which is really nice. Not an easy gig to get into. You really have to be good at specific skills, radio production skills and doing things the way they like. And having formerly been a production manager, it's like, oh yeah, I know how to do that stuff. And they appreciate that. And then I became president of worldvoices.org, the industry association of freelance voice talent, which is quite a challenge because it has a lot of moving pieces. And I've decided to, really push the organization where I wanted it to go in the first place when we first started it 10 years ago. Me and Dave Cavassier and Dustin Ebaugh and Chris Messalesta started WOVO in 2012. And the idea was, well, we needed industry association. Of course, everybody's like, well, we have to have voiceover club. It's like, no, you need an industry association. What you want is the ability to let the people who hire us know what professional voice acting is. And, that we've invested in our equipment, we've invested in training, and we've invested in our business and marketing and promoting ourselves. And we're good voice actors, which is, a rare talent. Everybody thinks they can do it, but not everybody can. It's sort of like podcasting, as I like to say. Just because everybody can doesn't mean everybody should.
Absolutely.
You got to have something to say, something important that you want to get out there. And but we've been reaching out to other industry associations that are related to voiceover, e-learning guilds, companies that produce e-learning material, producers of documentary stuff. There's just so much stuff that has to be produced these days. And having a professional voice actor do the voice work for those people is really, really important. So our philosophy is that a rising tide floats all boats. That if somebody goes out there and gets booked on a gig from a demo they did in somebody's studio that they could never reproduce, and their studio's not very good, it makes everybody look bad. And it makes it hard for people to get hired because the producer, people at home studios are all a bunch of amateurs, like they know what they're doing. So we're trying to promote the fact that people need to be involved in an industry association, know what the latest news is, what are the issues that are affecting the voiceover community. Right now, one of my prime focuses is talking to producers of all sorts of audio material to tell them that AI voices, it might be convenient, it might be cheap, and it will make your stuff boring. They keep saying that, oh, no, the technology is fabulous. It can totally emulate the human voice. No, it can't. You and I know when we look at a word or a sentence or a phrase, we have thousands of choices that we can make that a computer cannot in trying to emulate my voice. So people who are like selling their voice as, a licensed voice, eventually they're putting themselves out of business, I think. There was a post by J. Michael Collins this morning who was also talking about that, and he and I are totally on the same page. It's it's inevitable that it's going to come along. It's going to cut out the low end stuff that nobody cares if it's boring or not. Insurance company compliance videos, things like medical compliance, anything that that nobody really cares if it's really exciting. It's just content that people have to get or observe for continuing education credits, things along those lines.
Yeah.
But it takes a human to make it work. I've been talking with the E-Learning Guild of America, been doing a lot of other podcasts and talking to the people that produce other material. It's like, hey, look, how do you work with a professional voice actor? Well, one of the things you need to do is write for the spoken word, not the written word, because if you have to stick to, non-compound words and not using contractions and things like that the way we do when we normally talk to other human beings, it just starts to sound very stilted. And that's why you need a professional voice talent to do that kind of stuff, especially one with a really good studio that's always going to give you quality audio. So so in other words, I've been really busy with this kind of stuff. I hired a public relations person who's been shopping me around to a lot of different podcasts and publications, and she's doing a great job, which is something that, I've wanted to we've needed to do with World Voices for the last 10 years.
Yeah.
But we just really didn't know how. So once I became president, I said, let's hire a pro. We have the resources to do certain things. So we hired a bookkeeping firm to take care of our books that specializes in small not-for-profits. And I hired a public relations person. And now all those things that I wanted the organization to do are getting done.
That's amazing. That's so, well, first of all, congratulations. This sounds like not only a tremendously important thing to be available for a lot of voice actors, but also really important for the people producing content in the industry to have an understanding and affiliation with people who are holding themselves to the highest standards. Because there's nothing worse than, like you said, a bunch of voice actors who don't have the kind of like the bare minimum of what's required for things to be considered professional and broadcast quality.
Exactly.
The more people have, hire people that don't have this quality, it's like, well, why am I doing it the way I'm doing it? And then that's where we start seeing people say, I'm just going to use AI. I'm just going to do this the automated way. And then that devalues and depreciates everything of what people who take their craft seriously do. So
exactly.
It sounds amazing. What are some of the kind of, for anybody who is new to WOVO, I believe is the acronym pronunciation of the way it's going. What is some of the, like, is this something that somebody should look to join as a member or get hooked up on the newsletter, follow on social media? What are the steps someone should be doing to kind of get involved and understand more of what your mission statement is?
Well, the mission statement's pretty much what I've said, that we are there to enlighten the public and to act as a guild and really help people. We have a mentoring program. We've got lots of webinars that we've got, video of. We socialize. Community is very, very important. We have weekly chats, actually several chats a week, a worldwide one for people all over the world, and a lunch break one that we do, and we just throw out voiceover subjects and people talk about it. So that's really cool. One of the really good benefits that we have is a website called voiceover.biz, which is a searchable directory of all of our professional members, with their profiles, all their demos. So someone can do a search on a specific type of voice for a certain type of genre, and the people that perform those, who are vetted professionals, professional members of our organization, their demos come up and their profiles and their contact information, just like with the pay-to-plays, but we don't act as a middleman. We don't interfere. We just provide the platform for people to present themselves. I've always had the philosophy of let your demo and let your voice do the talking. And then, not have other people like pushing you and, that sort of thing. Voiceover is an entrepreneurial freelance business. Now, there are people like you that have been, doing, network productions and are members of the union, and, you're able to do all sorts of cool stuff. The majority of voiceover stuff is not that. It's great work if you can get it, and when you get it, it pays really great. And if you latch yourself onto a nice gig that's going to last a good long time, you ride the wave.
Yeah.
But people making a living at voiceover who are not mainline Hollywood actors or have lots of stage experience or on-camera experience, they're doing the e-learning and the audiobooks and the majority of the material that's out there. And they need representation, and agents don't look for that kind of work. They say, it doesn't pay, $1 million. Well, no, if it did, everybody would be trying to do it. The fact of the matter is everybody seems to be trying to do it, thinking they're going to make $1 million. But
yes.
You and I know that's not the case. But there's a lot of people who are, recovering podiatrists and recovering, acupuncturists and IT people and stuff.
Lawyers,
like, I should go into voiceover. I'm like, well, it's a profession. It's a skilled profession, and the people that hire us that need a voice need to understand we're not paving contractors. That we're not trying to outbid each other for the lowest price, and race to the bottom. We're professionals. There are standard rates out there that people should adhere to, and they should stick to their rates. Do we tell people what the rates are? No, that would be collusion. But people know what those are, and we all need to work together to maintain those rates. And there's a lot of other issues that are floating around as well. Technology, we fought against ISDN for a long time, and it sort of died its own death, 10 years after we said, you really should be going to some of these more online and internet-based protocols for doing studio-to-studio communication and remote recording and stuff.
Yeah.
And now they're finally doing it, so...
What are some of the things, both as a voice actor and somebody who has a home studio, that you would classify as them being a professional? What are the benchmarks that people need to have for both of those to separate them from what is not considered professional?
Well, when somebody applies, they apply, the membership fee is $99 a year, no matter what. And then you get vetted, and our crack membership staff really looks at each application, and we have a couple of parameters that we're looking for. One, do you have a web presence? Do you have a website? Do you have demos on there? We like to say, do you have a footprint, an internet footprint? We want to see that this person is an actual working professional. And what qualifies them as a professional after that, we put it down as 5 paid jobs in the last 13 months. That was not your grandmother's answering machine.
Not my own answering machine either, right? Yeah, that doesn't count.
No, you can do your own answering machine. I mean, no one's stopping you from doing that. But, and there's a number of other things. But we find that is the standard for what is if somebody gets hired, 5 times, chances are they know what they're doing. And so those are the criteria. If they don't qualify for that, then they become an associate member, and we have an educational process, and people can reach out, and we have a mentoring program that we're constantly building, and so it's a great thing. One of the most important pieces, though, here is that we are a not-for-profit. We are not. There's a lot of voiceover groups out there. I mean, if you go on LinkedIn and Facebook and stuff. Yeah. They are there to sell somebody's products. Oh, we want to get everybody health insurance, except they can't. And they're pushing the idea of, this person's trying to promote this type of work that they do, and this person is promoting their educational material. It's got nothing to do with community and really getting any together. They present it that way. We actually do. We actually do socialize, and we actually do work together. There's a lot of referral work and networking that goes on within the organization. And we have a big conference coming up in May in Orlando, WOVOCon number 7. So that's going to be, we've all missed each other. I mean, we always have a great time at WOVOCon.
Yeah. Where is that going to be located? Is that going to be
in Orlando?
Orlando, great.
Yeah. We used to do it in Vegas. Everybody complained about the smoke and the noise. And we're like, let's go to Orlando and at least try that.
Sure. Makes sense.
Yeah. And we also have something else that's coming out right now, and that's a demo player that allows you to upload all of your demos, and you get a link that just throws your demo player that can be customized to the colors of your website on your website. There's also a URL link that you can put on your stationery, your station head digitally, so people just click on that and can hear your demos right off your emails. So that's one of the benefits of membership, whether you're a professional or an associate. Only professionals can be on voiceover.biz. So people should go over there and check it out and see how that all works.
That's so amazing. And also it's funny because I know there have been players where you can upload and obviously things like SoundCloud and Spotify, however you want to host your demos have existed. But I've also found the ones that have been like tailored to VoiceOver in the past have not been really great for website integration. And so that's really great that you guys are doing that, because it's any kind of barrier, like even if you go to certain people's websites on SoundCloud, it says like, do you want to view here? Or like it brings you to this link and then you can't find everything. And anytime you create those like layers of complication for somebody in casting or a production company, you've already kind of ruled yourself out if they've got another 300 people to go through. So that's amazing that's what you guys are working on. And is that going to be, so when you sign up, as even an associate or as a professional member, you'll have access to that software.
You get access to that. You can we send you an invite. You register at that particular site, and then you customize your demo, and then you're given a frame code, an HTML code that you just put into your website, and again, there's also just the URL that you can hyperlink on your email or whatever digital content you produce.
Are you guys also going to be offering classes or training workshops or things that are, or workout groups, or what are some of the educational aspects of WOVO that are going to be there?
Well, that's what we've been doing all along. I mean, we've always had webinars. During the pandemic, Dave Cravassi and I set up the Distinguished Speaker Series, and we had Thompson on Thompson. Oh, what's his name? We all know who he is. And we had
Thompson Janny, or no?
Townsend Coleman.
Coleman, gosh.
Who is great. And Harlan Hogan. And, we had a few other people that we lined up, and then the pandemic ended, and it's like, all right, we'll save these for another time. But all the videos are there, and the talks were really, really good. But we also have a bunch of webinars that have been going on, international discussion of how to work the international market. I've done one on home studios. There's great material out there, but we're really building our mentorship program. People can find a mentor, somebody who can work with them in a specific area of voiceover, for on a limited basis, because, we're professionals and we all work full time, but we do have a structured mentorship program that people should take advantage of.
That's so important, and that's, I think, a part that's missing from a lot of those Facebook groups or anything else is there's obviously an outlet for people to ask questions, but there's a lack of actual, not necessarily investment in the person that you're working with, but it's a very easy platform for you to be harshly criticized a lot of times.
Yeah, tell me about it.
So I think having a mentor, which is something that I've always preached in the entertainment industry, I do mentoring with my alma mater, NYU, all the time, and I work with students there. It allows people to have confidence and to feel like they have an actual link into the industry and someone who knows it. It's like, this person's investing in me, and they want to help me and see me grow and see me succeed. I think in these artistic ventures, extremely competitive as they are, there is a portion of people who truly see it as a competition rather than like a relay race, and it's very unhealthy to see it that way. So I think mentors are a phenomenal way of doing that. People who are working in the business, if you're a professional and you're working with an associate, or a vice versa, however you want to phrase it, that's amazing. And I think, to me, that alone, if I was interested in getting into voiceover, which a lot of people who listen to this podcast are, people who more than likely are coming at this from like, I want to be in video games or anime or animation, and don't realize to have a full career, there's so many more branches to like everything you said in the beginning. The majority of people are looking at things like e-learning, audiobooks, commercials, promos, all that stuff. And having a mentor who can help you navigate that path is very, very important if you're interested in getting in VO today.
Yeah, and we've got some people in our organization who are, in our mentorship program who are just, top-notch people. Good educators. They care about people, and you don't really hear that much, in the voiceover business. There's a lot of, like I said, there's a lot of marketing going on. And, and I have a real problem with a lot of people that do a lot of marketing because they tend to try to create voice actors in their own image, as opposed to the individual, really trying to get people to exploit what is unique about them. That's what sells. That's really what casting people look. I've heard this person read this stuff, 20 people read it the same way.
Yeah.
Why does this person do it differently? And then, of course, learning the entrepreneurial nature of it, being able to do bookkeeping and marketing and all those other things. And, you might find a webinar here, you might find a webinar there, but if you've got an organization of a bunch of professionals that all have these different skills, that's a good organization to be part of, along with the outreach we do to the general public and saying, hey, voiceover is a profession. Treat us that way.
Yeah, too many people, the amount of times I've heard somebody say, I want to make quick cash or do this as a side hustle, and that's fine and great for everybody, but in order to have a successful long career doing voiceover, you must treat this like a business, like anything else in the world, and that's an investment in yourself and the time and your training and the resources you're going to accompany yourself with, whatever. And I mean, even being a part of a guild or an organization says to a prospective client, I'm taking what I'm doing seriously. And, there are marketplaces like Fiverr that exist for a reason, and you're going to get what you pay for there. And that's something I think a lot of people are combating against, is the devaluing of what a lot of voiceover has been subjected to because of those type of marketplaces where rates can be, $1. But at the end of the day, if you're a professional and you're showing that your standard of quality and the people that you stand with and the people that you're recommending work at a certain caliber, how are you differentiating yourself versus that $1 value versus that hundreds and thousands of dollars value? It's, again, a rising tide raises all ships, the strength in numbers type of scenario. So I really, really appreciate what you're doing and everything that Wovo, I guess, is now really pushing forward to make a statement about the voiceover industry, because it can be, it very much could have been and can be in danger if people don't start saying, like, we need to stand with each other and uphold the quality we are putting out there.
I totally agree.
Amazing. So I want to take a step back here real quick,
Sure.
and obviously and get to know a little bit about you, and then get into a little bit of VOBS stuff and how you got into making the podcast, becoming a voice actor, and where all of your knowledge for this stuff became, where you became an entrepreneur, and how all of this stuff started. I correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you grew up on the East Coast. I want to say if you didn't grow up and you lived in Buffalo for a period of time. Am I remembering correctly?
Only for 58 years. Yeah.
Only 58 years. Great.
Yeah. Thrilled to be going to the Bills-Rams game tomorrow.
Oh, great.
I haven't seen the Bills play in a while. This is our year.
Yes, Bills. Yes, go Bills.
Yeah. No, I grew up in Buffalo, which was a great place to grow up. But when you get older, December, January, and February can get kind of weird in the Northeast.
Quite brisk.
It's a little bit more, in contrast to, what is it in my backyard right now? It's 103 in my backyard right now. So it's probably the same in yours.
106 it's reading, but
okay, wait,
we're getting through it.
You're farther west.
Yeah.
I grew up there. I did all the things that everybody else did, but I played hockey. I got involved in theater. Wanted to get into broadcasting. Went to college, studied broadcasting first at Bowling Green State University, and then back at Buffalo State College, which is a New York State college, and everybody knows the SUNY system. It's just a great system. Got a great education there. Once I graduated from there, I went into radio and spent 12 years in radio as an on-air jock. Hey, it's 28 degrees out there right now, and the lake effect snow warning. and worked my way into management. Was a production director, made lots of commercials, worked at a lot of different stations, and then got out of radio. Once I was a station manager, radio and I just sort of parted ways in 1991. And, I went in the insurance business for a while, which was very educational, great preparation for doing voice work because it's point to point, face to face, direct marketing.
Yeah.
I know you don't want to talk to me, but throw the phone down. I broke several phones while doing that, but it was good training for that. And I did okay at it. And then, my mother-in-law said, you're really good with U.S. history. Why don't you go back to school and teach? So I went back to school, spent a year and a half getting my New York State teacher certificate, which is like a whole nother degree, and immediately started teaching in a couple of public schools in Western New York, and just loved teaching American history. The thing that got me hired, though, was the fact that they had just built a closed circuit TV system in the school district and had no idea how to do anything with it. And they're like, well, we see you have a background, but could you get us built as a TV studio? I'm like, yes. And in 2 weeks they had a TV studio. So, and on the cheap, but I showed them, here's how you do TV. The greatest part about that was several of the students that I worked with all went on to careers in broadcasting.
Amazing.
And they come, I would run into them. Oh, Mr. Lenard, that was the great class that you taught, and you taught me how to do this and that, and I was able to move on. Also, turning them on to the Marx Brothers, which, as far as I'm concerned, was something that made the whole thing worth it.
Yeah, well worth the entire experience to get exposed to that.
Right. And then, it's a long story why I left education, but we'll stay out of that. But I got out of that, found myself as a stay-at-home dad in 2001, and started. I was finishing my master's degree, and I had to do a project on something. And the chairman of the history department, who would be thrilled to get rid of me, said, "Hey, do you do video work?" I'm like, "Well, yeah." And he threw me this project that had been done about a local jazz musician. And it's a great story, and some people have heard this story. They should hear the documentary that we made out of it. But I found that I couldn't do a video documentary because there wasn't enough stock footage of the Harlem Renaissance and stuff. It was all stuff that wasn't related to what this particular individual was doing. And I'm like, well, wait a second. He was a piano player and arranger, but he also had another great backstory. He was in the original cast of Porgy and Bess. He worked with Gershwin, and then by certain circumstances, the story goes on, he ended up in Buffalo and became a very influential jazz musician in Buffalo that all the other jazz musicians looked up to and respected. And while I was working, and I met him several times and saw him play. And he was in his 90s, and he died in the middle of that. So I turned it into a documentary about his life. We took all the audio from the video, chopped it up so I could give it some good continuity, which was my first real experience with digital editing. And it became a radio documentary that went on the radio on a friend's radio show on a public station who was about bebop. And it turns out that this guy, Alan Tinney, was the founder of bebop. He was the arranger in these after-hours clubs in Harlem that Charlie Parker and Monk and Max Roach and all these great jazz legends, Dizzy Gillespie, would all go after hours after their gigs uptown.
How cool!
And he was the arranger and the band leader in this little after-hours club, and that's where small combo jazz started to come around, and that's when you start to hear stuff like bebop, and he was the one that did a lot of the original charts on that. And then he ended up in Buffalo. So it was a great story. Anyway, yeah. I mean, it's a sort of a long story. You can go here, and it's
What is it?
It's called. If they go to my YouTube channel, it's hiding there.
Okay.
It's about Al Tinney, his life in music. And of course he played piano through that. And I took the music bed that he created and put that behind all of the interviews. the people who knew him.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, wait a second. If I can create all this sitting in my basement studio here, shouldn't I be able to do like the kind of voiceover work I used to do in radio? And I typed in voiceover in one of those early search engines, and like, as I like to say, when Dorothy opens the door from her black and white farmhouse in Kansas and into the color of, Munchkin Land, that's where voiceover was. It was just starting to dawn as an internet-based business. So I really got in the first wave of that, about 2002, 2003. And doing it ever since. I mean, I was doing, studio work and on-air work, for years before that. But, the insurance business and then teaching just brought me to where I am today. And I really enjoy teaching voiceover, especially the technological end of it, working with people one-on-one and getting their sound the way it's supposed to be.
It's so funny because I think a lot of people, when they have if they came from a different career or if they had a different hobby, they wind up utilizing those to their advantage in the career of voiceover while pursuing this. I was curious, when you had first kind of had the curiosity about voiceover and you were beginning your kind of online investigation around what you could do or how you could get into it. Do you remember some of the resources you had found and what it had said to do when you were first doing your first excavation of what to do?
There was nothing.
That's what I was kind of assuming.
I mean, there was a couple of things. I mean, I admittedly went to a Susan Berkeley thing in Palm Beach, where I met people who I am still friends with today, who are just, people who were, also getting in on the ground floor on this. She had no idea what she was talking about. And people would say, well, what kind of an interface should you use and what kind of a microphone? And she would go, and I'm like, well, you could. And everybody would go, like that. And that's, I was one of the only people that understood how to record properly.
And then the seminar took place in the opposite direction.
In the opposite direction, right. Yeah. And then she started inviting me to go talk to her people. And I'm like, My wife, bless her heart, was like, you can't throw out, 20 years of experience without, people should be paying you for your knowledge. So I put out a shingle as the home voiceover studio master, and I've been doing that for 15 years. And the more you do, the more you learn about the individual, eccentricities of every room. Every voice is different. Every room is different. I mean, and you and I worked together, and I took a good look at your studio. I'm like, okay, here's how we can improve this. And I do it with my ears, which fortunately still work at my old age. Some people, well, you need an acoustician or somebody who does all those calculations and, and putting the foam in the right places. I'm like, it's like pornography. I know it when I hear it.
Yeah. Well, I got to say too, Dan, I have gotten remarkably, I mean, obviously a lot of it is taking the business seriously and having invested in the space that I have. But I've had studios legitimately tell me, people I've never worked with before say, they're like, what are you recording from? Like, what's going on? They're like, you have one of the best sounding rooms I've ever heard. And I obviously credit a lot of that to you helping me navigate all this stuff and figuring out where to kind of put the Lego pieces and to make that best thing. Because a lot of people think let me just shove everything in my closet, get this tight little box around the microphone so that no sound can get in, when in reality that's kind of the complete opposite of what you want to be doing. And granted, I've had a lot of these studios call me in specifically because they know that I'm going to have a great sounding studio, especially when during the pandemic happening, they needed somebody who they could rely on to record from home and not have to be like, okay, is there going to be a siren every 5 minutes, or is there going to be, a hum or refrigerator, air conditioner, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
What are some of the kind of things when somebody is deciding to invest in a home studio, things that they should be aware of from a financial standpoint and also from a blueprint standpoint? What are kind of the main things somebody should know or consider before they even make that first purchase on whatever it's going to be?
Well, the most important thing is, where are you going to record? Mm-hmm. The room is 90% of the quality of your audio. There's like no question about it. I mean, this is years and years of, well, I got a U87, or I got to get this microphone. I got to have this, the Grace 101 interface. None of that stuff has anything to do with performance. None of that's going to change the way you read copy, or how you perform copy or your acting. It has nothing to do with that. Most engineers can't tell the difference between, a 10,000, well, maybe they might be able to tell a $10,000 microphone, but because you'll be hearing jets that are taking off in another county.
Yeah.
The more expensive the equipment is, the more sensitive it is. The more sensitive it is, the more critical the environment in which you record. I mean, that's just basic logic. But what I do is I teach people 3 basic things that they have to know. 3 basic, things about, if you master these 3 different things, which are mostly physical, the equipment doesn't really matter as much. You don't want cheap equipment. You don't want to buy a studio condenser microphone under $150. They're noisy. You don't buy combo units, except for, Rode makes a really nice combo unit with their NT1 and the A1A interface. It's, that's a great combo. But the other combos that, Sweetwater and these other companies put together, there are certain things you should buy. Don't be convinced, and big tip, if you're ever in, Banjo Emporium, or one of the other big box places that sell, musical gear and recording gear, don't tell them what you're doing. Like, oh, I'm setting up a voiceover studio. Don't do that. They have no idea what they're talking about. There literally is a handful of people on God's green earth that truly understand what a home studio is. Mm-hmm. And most of them are not big studio engineers. They are used to working in very expensive, professionally built environments that are acoustically neutral, acoustically sterile, and they're using $10,000 microphones because they have an acoustically neutral and acoustically sterile environment and the equipment to do it in. Voiceover is much simpler than that. The most important thing is the acoustical signature of the room you're in. Keeping noise out and preventing reflection. Those are 2 important things. It's literally impossible to soundproof a room in a house. You've got furnace, AC, you got, the clogging troop next door, all these things that are going on. And you've got to be able to isolate yourself. Usually if you have an interior closet, especially a walk-in closet, that can serve as your initial booth. That's saving you $6,000 right there. Yeah. If you're surrounded by clothes and you're in an internal closet, doesn't have an exterior wall, as long as everybody's not making noise in the house, that will serve you very, very well. Or if you just have a room that's just really quiet. And I've met a lot of people that have really quiet rooms. And it's like, well, this is great. You live out in the country, or the room is in the back of the house and way off the street. That's really important. Acoustical treating, there's no set rules about it, but there are things you can do, and then you can tune the room to have minimal reflection. And that's really important. That takes the skill of somebody who actually knows what they're doing. And like I said, not a lot of people understand that. Mm-hmm. Second is proper microphone technique. Now, I'm sure when you're doing voiceover, that's not how you have your microphone.
No, this is just the only way I can. The arm only goes so far, so I can't go overhead. But behind me, where you can see, right, I am practicing some pretty decent mic technique as learned from you.
Exactly. My thing's right here. I can move it wherever I want to move it.
Yeah.
People don't understand how to use a studio condenser mic. So there's a technique to it. You don't want to be talking directly into it. I say, hang it upside down, have the diaphragm, about at eye level, so your copy can be down and underneath. And by having it that way, and you can hear me as clear as a bell, and I can go Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers, and there are no plosives.
Yeah.
And it still sounds like me. And there's a number of other psychoacoustical reasons for doing that, which is why anytime you walk into a professional studio, that's how they usually have the mic.
Usually.
Usually. If they don't, I'm like, all right, what am I doing here? But people haven't been going into studios much. They really have to have a home studio now.
Yeah.
And it's vital. The pandemic just, George Whittam and I, we've been preparing for this all our lives because, we were busier than, Mark Cashman likes to say, a one-legged guy at an ass-kicking contest. It was pretty nuts there for a couple of years. And it still is. I mean, people still, they want to get into voiceover, or they're actors and they're trying, they've been working in a studio all their lives. I'm like, well, I don't understand this recording thing. Okay, let me sit you down. Let me show you how to do this. So number two of the three is proper microphone technique. People, they think you're supposed to talk into the mic like this. I find that if you use a pop screen, it reminds you that you're on a microphone, and you tend to talk louder, which is not the way it's supposed to be. You know, it's like if you've got an unobstructed view of your copy and you can move your arms and stuff, that's going to make you nice and relaxed and be very conversational. So that's number two. Number three is setting proper input levels, which nobody understands for whatever reason. But there's a process to it. And I have a very simple way of teaching it that, so that they're modulating properly and they don't have nice tiny little waveforms and they're not over modulating, and they're giving an engineer who they send the audio to the headroom to be able to work with it.
Yeah.
And so if it's clean sounding, you're using your mic properly, and you've got your level set, that's really all you're required to do.
Yep.
So all these people saying, well, you got to use this processor, and you got to use this, and you got to use that, and you got to do this, and all these things, it's engineering nonsense. Just because somebody uses it doesn't mean you have to use it.
Yeah.
And if your sound is clean, I have an acronym, WHISTLE, what it's supposed to sound like.
I like that.
And most people don't know what that is. They're used to what they hear on the radio. And they're like, well, I'm supposed to sound like I'm on the radio. They don't realize that what goes on the radio has nothing to do with how something was recorded.
Yeah.
That it goes through a transmitter, and there's processing in there to make the signal as loud as possible so it can throw as far as it can. Like, who listens to the radio anymore?
Yeah. Well,
I mean, I do in my car, but I like listening to classical music, and I'll listen on the radio. But for the most part, people are listening to streaming music.
Spotify, yeah.
And that's not heavily processed. I listen to a streaming service called Radio Paradise. There's no processing on that. It's like you listen. It's like you're in the studio with the musicians, even though they recorded it 60 years ago.
Wow.
It's just great stuff. So. And I'm not an audio geek. I'm not into the gear the way, say, George Whittam is. He's like constantly looking at okay, we look at this new board or look at this new piece of software. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Okay.
Well, you have the nice balance between the both of you, and that's what's I've always found helpful about your podcast, because it's a balance of understanding, like exactly what you were just saying. At the end of the day, what a casting director or producer, director, whoever is listening to the audition being sent in, ultimately what they're listening for is, if this person is recording from home, can I use what they send me in the final product, and their performance. And I feel like there's, especially with a lot of people who are doing the marketing, they're trying to manipulate people to think that you can fix performance or create performance by buying things, specifically gear or, certain chains of compression and things like that. You have to start with the performance, and then you can move to tweaking little tiny things if you need to. But ultimately, there's a big a manipulation to a degree of aspiring voiceover actors who get kind of roped into, like, I gotta buy this, 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 when at the end of the day, the thing you should probably really be buying is an acting class and somebody who can just teach you the fundamentals, like what you just presented to us.
Oh, absolutely. And and people get lost in a lot of that minutia of I've got to make myself sound great. Well, you've probably heard me say this before. The idea of a home voiceover studio is not to make you sound great. It's to make you sound like you. As you exist. That's what they're hiring. They're not hiring people because you're a great producer. You know, I mean, sometimes they'll hire me because they know I can edit and do certain things, and there's certain types of genre material that they know I can do.
Sure.
But I tell people, I've been doing this since the Nixon administration. Maybe I know something. But people who are just starting out may not know a lot of these subtle things. And like we say, it's supposed to sound a certain way. We hear this term broadcast quality an awful lot. And I've come to the conclusion that there's no such thing. It's what people describe as, well, it sounds like it's on TV. It's like, well, that's got nothing to do with what goes on here.
Yeah.
I think what they're talking about, as far as quality audio is concerned, is it doesn't sound bad. And there are plenty of things that can make audio sound bad. The idea is that however you record it, you just want them to hear your voice. You do not want anything that distracts the listener from your performance. They don't want hiss in the background. They don't want the sirens in the background. They don't want the dog barking or babies crying or a low frequency hum that's raising your noise floor to minus 20. Things along those lines. And if you record right up front, if you set your situation up right, you don't have to rely on a lot of technology to clean it up, because you're recording right in the first place. And that's essentially what I teach. And, a lot of other people don't teach that because they're recording engineers and they teach people what they know, which has very little to do with voiceover. Yeah. So, it's a tough job, but somebody's got to do it.
Exactly.
And I enjoy it when people, get their studio together and they book work. That's the fun part.
Yeah. There are a lot of people who I think have the odds stacked against them when they are trying to start voiceover because they've got either a baby or they've got animals or they live in that busy area. So I understand and sympathize with the people who have to use things like denoisers or limiters, whatever it might be. What are some of the things that you feel like, okay, you're not able to create the ideal environment for whatever reason, finances or just simply where you live? What are the things that you recommend to people that you're like, okay, I can co-sign on this?
Okay. Well, my philosophy on this has changed a little bit over the years. I've thought about it and I see what other people use. People who do live work, who have to do live remote sessions, they've got to have some front end processing. Mm-hmm. But that's, a minuscule percentage of people doing voiceover. Yeah. These are the cream of the crop people that are, on call all the time. The Joe Ciprianos and John Bailey and people like you, who have to, it's like, hey, we need you to do these things. We need to update this promo, that sort of thing. Those people need to have those things, and those need to be set up by a professional so there's a consistent sound that the studio that they're recording to always knows what they're going to get.
Consistency.
If you're just
Yep.
Right, exactly. If you're just somebody who is sending out auditions or just doing, project work, and you've got to quiet it down, most of the stuff you need is in the software, which has gotten really, really good. I use Adobe Audition. It has noise reduction strategies in it that work really well. I've been producing a number of podcasts for other people who know nothing about audio, and they don't listen. I'm like, look, I give them the same routine. Okay, you got record in a quiet space. If you're doing a phone interview with somebody, make sure, and they're in Midtown Manhattan, make sure they close the windows because I don't want to hear the traffic on Fifth Avenue and the sirens constantly going by. Can you remove that?
It gives me like war stories for me hearing that type of stuff. I'm like, I left New York. I don't want to hear this.
LA is actually a little quieter.
Yeah, surprisingly.
But the thing is people don't know, and they think that, well, can you perform a miracle? I'm like, yes, I can be an alchemist, and I can do certain things using Adobe Audition. There are some great noise cancellation strategies in there, but you gotta know how to use them, and you have to understand what point does a certain process degrade your sound and makes it somewhat unusable to an engineer. Because once it's screwed up, not a whole lot you can do about it, which is why I always believe that everything should be done in post. Adobe Audition has has those features to do that. Even something simple like Twisted Wave has noise reduction features that work really, really well. But that's why I say, do the best you can to isolate yourself and have the best acoustical environment. If you can't, don't over process stuff to try and get a sound that you want.
Yeah.
I think that's really important. But learn how to use some presets and listen, and have somebody else who's not working on the project listen to the audio and go, that's acceptable.
Yeah. And that's something you offer on your website, which is how I even got to work with you when I first did. You have a thing where you can send in a specimen, as you call it. And
I have an actual specimen collection cup on the top of my homepage.
I love it. But that was how I kind of got hooked up with you, and I realized, okay, this is someone who understands exactly the thing, because as we were kind of joking about earlier, I remember when I first started out and I went to like B&H when I lived in New York, and I was trying to, this was, I guess, 10 years ago at this point, and trying to talk to them about voiceover. It's people, these are more than likely, these are like college kids too.
Right.
A very rare chance there's somebody who is actually a specialist, even in anything, whether it's a musician or not, but working in voiceover is so specific and unique to anything else that uses a microphone. That's why, I sent in mine to yours, and just understanding what certain breakdowns for auditions will tell you, we want your levels between here and here. And they'll explicitly say, do not do any post-processing. We want to hear it the way that it's going to sound if we book you. And that's why working with you is so important. And I think for anybody looking to get started, it's so important, because when you send that audition into a studio that's asking for those parameters, if they are not good, they're instantly going to write you out. And why would you want to, you might be the most talented person in the world, but if you can't do what's required on the day of the recording, the booking, when they're in extremely tight turnarounds, why not just do the things at the bare minimum that can help you send in something that's, I don't want to say listenable, but usable for their,
absolutely,
for their production. So that's what I find so important. What are the type of things that you're adjusting for people? Is it most likely like where they're positioned, where their gain's at, the things we kind of talked about when you're working with someone or they send you in a sample?
Right. Yeah. And I will review it and say, okay, it's your noise floor is a little loud. Where are you recording? How are you setting your levels? How are you positioned to your microphone? And then I work with them. I love doing, home visits, which you've been able to experience, which turn into long conversations about stuff that have very little to do with, with your home studio. Cause it's like, okay, do this, do that. Okay, fine. So what are you working on? That sort of thing. And then, I work with people on Zoom, and I've been able to successfully teach people on Zoom because I can hear what they're putting out from their studio. And I'm like, okay, how are you addressing your microphone? Okay, it should be like this. And we fine tune it until it sounds, up to my standards. Mm-hmm. And that's really, what the standards should be. I'm not saying I wrote the standards. Well, actually, I sort of did. One of the things we did with World Voices is, I was vice president of technical standards, and I created a committee of other recording engineers to discuss what should be the parameters for digital voiceover audio. Mm-hmm. And, I'll mention a few names here. Uncle Roy Yokelson, Cliff Zellman, George Whittam, and Joe Van Riper, who was there, and since then Jordan Reynolds and a few others. And we very, very quickly came up with what we thought the standards should be. Mm-hmm. And we have those on our website. And when people send in to get their studio, we say approved. We're not officially an educational organization at WOVO, but we do approve the studio. This is a professional studio. That if you work with this person, audio is not going to be an issue. Yeah. And it goes to those standards. And it's those three things I was talking about. And, of course, you throw it to the engineers like, I can work with that. I can throw some noise reduction on it. I can work with that.
That's every cocky engineer in the business.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Got a great set of chops. I can work with them.
Just record it on your iPhone. I'll fix it.
Right, yeah. I'm too much of a purist. I'm old school. You know, it's you do it right up front. I was thinking about this last night. It's like, you know, you got all these people who are like, yeah, there's all this technology and stuff, and you know, I don't want people reaching for the technology right off the bat. Learn the basics, do it right, play with the other stuff to see, you know, how it affects your audio. Really, all that stuff is for room correction, or if you've got, you know, a certain noise that you've got to filter out of there or something along those lines. But really, all the stuff that mostly is going out these days, you know, with all the narration material and e-learning and you know, instructional stuff, you know, especially compliance videos. Oh my God, they're so boring. Having been on the receiving end of several of those in the insurance business, you know, these are things that people need to do properly. Yeah. And make the job of the engineer easier.
That's like, I mean, as much as people say, you know, eat the green apple to stop your mouth clicks. I mean, when you're sometimes either sending in an audition or you're working with a client, you know, that's, do we have a remedy here? Right? What is this?
I've got alcohol.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
You know, this stuff works great. You know, you mix it 20 to 1 in a little spray bottle like this, and you go, you swish it around, you spit it out, and all of a sudden, all your mouth noise is gone.
Oh, that is amazing. And that's going to defeat the entire thing I was going to say right now, but I'll say it anyway.
Go ahead.
The cosmetic...
the Granny Smith apple thing is a popular one.
But the Granny Smith apple, sure, even just drinking water I've found to be helpful for me. Like, you're just not drinking water before recording. Yeah, hydration, people, is like, that's like golden rule number 1. You got to be hydrated the night before and when you're doing it, but... A mouth declicker I have found to be a cosmetic remedy that I will absolutely play with when I need to. If I need to, if I've did a long session and I'm like, oh, I don't feel like re-recording that, I'll just go in there with the mouth declicker. And that's a cosmetic fix. It's not fixing anything that is hopefully going to ruin the integrity of the WAV file or change the performance.
Yeah, no. And look at this. This thing... really cheap. It's like $20 a bottle. It'll last you 5-10 years.
Yeah.
And you do that, and then you don't even have to worry about that. The mouth noise goes away.
Yeah, and that's something people, I mean, Nimjum is something a lot of people use, you know, there are these things that you can buy and use. I mean, I've got a voice straw sitting right in front of me. Anything you can do to, when you get to the booth to record your job, to not have to rely on the post-processing, I think is like what you're saying. Do it all up front. Be sure you're ready in there and not be like, all right, here I am ready to record, and I'm going to give this engineer a nightmare of a job editing it, and then he's going to tell the director, you know, working with this person is a lot of work for me. You know, I got to get rid of nose knocks, mouth clicks. It's like, can we talk to this person? You don't want to be that person getting sat down by your director saying, what's going on here?
Right, yeah, and don't hit a taco truck before you do a session either.
So. stomach grumbling like a truck, a garbage truck before you go into
spicy food. Not good for voiceover.
Yeah. So I would be remiss to not talk about this, despite kind of our purist mentality we've been having. But what are if you have to, because obviously you need a microphone, you obviously need an interface. What are the things for people? I know budget is always a huge question, but what are the things you have found that you are recommending a lot to people of the technological necessities that we need to do the job?
I hate having to mention specific brands, but I already did. Rode makes great microphones. You know, you can buy a Neumann. They make great microphones, but a great microphone isn't necessarily what you want. Yeah. Because, like I said, the more expensive, the higher quality, whatever that means, the microphone, the more sensitive it is, and again, the more critical the environment in which you're working. So you don't need a super duper sensitive microphone, but a Rode NT1 and the companion interface that they make for that, the AI1, which has got lots of gain. There's a lot of people, people doing animation and promo work and gaming and things like that, where they have to get really loud. And not a lot of interfaces have limiters on them. Mm-hmm. A lot of people have been going to using the Apollo Twin from Universal Audio. Very, very expensive. very complicated. If you have no idea how to record, you don't start there.
As someone who has one, I absolutely agree.
Yeah, I mean, you can set up a lot of stuff up front, but you got to know how to set that stuff up, and you've got to know what it's supposed to sound like.
Yeah.
And you've really got to bring a professional engineer to set that up for you. And then, and then save them. So, how many times have I gotten calls in the middle of the night? I rebooted my computer and all my presets are gone.
100%.
Oh, well,
I've had it happen a ton to me, and then we have to have a moment where your engineer's connecting to your computer and they're trying to figure out why this thing's not working or turning off this thing or your virtual input. So way more complicated work than you need if you don't know how to use it.
Exactly. And so all this expensive equipment means nothing if you know how to use it.
Exactly.
And it takes years to learn that.
Mm-hmm.
So, you can take the time to learn that, but you're taking time away from learning how to create characters, how to maintain a character, how to, to understand the who, what, where, why, and when of who are you talking to and when are you talking to them, and all those sorts of things that go into performance that really set you apart from everybody else.
Yeah.
If your audio is okay, the rest of that is, it's not really that critical. You've got to be able to. You don't want your audio to be in the way.
Yeah.
If you get the right stuff up front. That's why I say something like a Rode NT1 or and the AI1 or a Focusrite 2i2 and Audio-Technica makes a 2035 and the 4040. I mean, there's a lot of microphones out there.